Prime Minister Netanyahu a few days ago looked into the TV cameras and said, quote, "I plan to continue serving as your prime minister for many more years, but it is up to you, the voters." Well, the voters are responding. According to recent polls right now, the answer is no thank you. Two polls released this week and show Netanyahu would not be able to form a majority coalition. The Khan poll has Netanyahu under 30 seats, with Benny Gantz's blue and white party at 37 seats. But more importantly, perhaps, when you add up the smaller coalition partners, the right-wing bloc has 59 seats, under the magic number of 61 that you need to form the government. Similar numbers in the Channel 13 poll. Likud is at 30, blue and white is at 36. And again, when you add up the smaller parties and who they will back as PM, the right-wing bloc once again comes in at 59 seats, a minority. With me now in studio is Michael Kleiner, a former member of the Knesset with the Likud party. Also with me in studio, Daniel Ben-Simon, a former member of the Knesset with the Labour Party, to talk about all of the campaign issues. Michael, let me start with you, sir. The polls are interesting because they don't show a massive sea change. It's not a massive shift of support, but it is enough to tilt the scales and make it much more difficult for Netanyahu to get a coalition, that these soft right voters are leaving Likud. Can Netanyahu stop that hemorrhaging?
First of all, one must remember that the other side can in no way form a coalition, because there are certain seats who go to the Arab parties, yes. And Lapid and Gantz both declared they never will go with them, so they are much farther from Netanyahu to the magic number you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a big issue we'll talk about. No.
Then there is another fact. Actually, Likud has a majority, but there is a technicality called the threshold. If you don't get 4 seats, you get nothing. There are 2 or 3 right-wing parties who get 3.5 seats. One of them is Avigdor Lieberman's, which undoubtedly will pass the threshold. He has, you know, the old Russian guard of immigrants who don't answer pollsters, and always in election, Lieberman gets much more than in polls. So if you add the 4 seats of Lieberman at least, so you have 63.
Daniel, on that point, I mean, is it clearly the polls show that blue and white, you know, the Gantz-Lapid merger, they are topping the polls. They have a big lead. It's kind of an empty victory, right? I mean, how can he can't form a coalition either? That's a problem for him.
Except Shimon Peres and Tzipi Livni, anyone who got the mandate from the president formed the coalition. You agree with me? You remember?
I'm not sure. No, Peres,
as soon as you get...
No, Peres in the 60-60 got a mandate they couldn't form.
Let me tell you, in 19...
He formed, but he didn't get the vote.
Just make your point of today's election.
He said he formed the government, but he lost the vote.
What I'm telling you is that when you get the mandate, yes, you form a coalition. The religious who have no word, if they want just to get some money and some beliefs in religion, they will go with you. They will vote for Oslo or Code like they did last time with Shas. So in a way, you will form, if Gantz and Lapid get the mandate from the president, if they get 61, they can get 65, they can get 68. Because
how 61?
No, I'm saying if they,
how can they
win
61?
the elections, the president give them.
You mean with the Arabs?
Yeah,
they've never said. The Arab parties have never sat in.
I want to say something. I predict that after Netanyahu goes home, the issue of the Arabs will not be as critical as it is today. He made them enemies of Israel. He made them traitors of Israel.
Well, I want to get Michael. Can you respond to that thought that Netanyahu has cast the Arabs aside, and in the near future they're going to become a big part of
if the Arabs of Israel will decide to vote for a party that will take care for the problems of Israeli Arabs and not for the problems of the Muqatta and Abu Mazen and the Palestinians, so then they will be partners for any coalition. We are not against Arabs. They have to decide.
Good to know.
The voters have to decide. When Hanin Zouabi says that he supports terror and they support the destruction of Israel and don't recognize Israel as a Jewish state, they're not partners.
You cannot disqualify 20% of the population because of political beliefs. So in a way, it has to do with peace and war. In these issues, the
existence of Israel is not political views. They have to recognize Israel as a Jewish state.
Come on, they don't have to. They don't have to be Jewish. They don't have to be Zionist.
No, they don't have to be Jewish.
So
but
let them,
like the Druze, they have to accept Israel as a Jewish state, and then they will have full rights.
What I'm saying, eventually, This 20% cannot stay outside of Israel. They are in hospitals, they are in universities. You see them everywhere.
Do you think this is the election they fought, that for the first time ever, that they would be willing to sit in the government, in a ruling coalition?
Not as long as Netanyahu is here. Netanyahu has kind of...
Now, why Labour Party will take them? Gantz will take them?
They are afraid to speak because of people like you who say, if you take the Arabs, you're done. You are a traitor. So when people like you speak differently, when people like you speak differently, and Netanyahu, I think
they say they don't want to sit in a government. You know, when Herzog approached Meretz before the last election and said that they will make an agreement with the Arab parties not to lose vote for the marginal votes, so Meretz agreed. Yeah. The Arab parties were not ready to sign an agreement with Meretz because Meretz is Zionist. So, of course, as long as this is their position, they are not partners neither to Likud nor to Gantz or Lapid or Labour Party or even Meretz.
I want to jump in here. There's another story that I want to get your take on, which is the divide on whether or not Netanyahu, if he's elected, if he's serving as prime minister again, should he be given immunity from prosecution while he's in office so he could focus on the good of the country, the security of the country, and not have to worry about his own legal defense. For our viewers, this is relatively known in Europe as the French law. It gives immunity from prosecution for corruption for a serving prime minister who's in office. Education Minister Naftali Bennett says he supports that so-called French law. Another politician with the National Union Party wants to even go further and support retroactive immunity. We asked on our show last night, the Sunday evening election show, Yuli Edelstein, the parliament speaker. He said as long as he's speaker, he would not give such a law the green light. He, by the way, is the #2 in the Likud party behind Netanyahu.
In the Likud party list.
No personal legislation is possible in the Knesset as long as I'm speaker. There was at some point a discussion of the so-called French law, but we are not there anymore. French law speaks of kind of, in my very free and not juridical language, of not bothering the sitting prime minister with investigations. We are not at this stage. The investigation is over. As we said, the official accusations or suspicions have been published, and now it's for Netanyahu's lawyers to prove them wrong.
#2 on the party, the primary list, but a clear leader of the Likud party, one of the top politicians speaking out against the French law. Let me start with you, Michael. Your thoughts on the French law, the possibility of immunity for Prime Minister Netanyahu if he's elected. Is this a campaign issue now? Could this hurt or help Likud?
No, it won't happen. It's not practical. It will never be retroactive. So it's really not relevant. But by the way, with these accusations, why does he need immunity? They're so weak.
It seems to me that he won't need the French law, which is good for French president, because he won't be here. It seems to me that when a leader falls down, there's a feeling it's beyond the polls. You feel that something is, after 10 years as prime minister and 30 years in Israeli politics, there is this kind of feeling that Israelis are saying Netanyahu...
Wasn't that the same feeling a few years ago with the Zionist Union? Netanyahu, until the last day, was behind in the polls.
I know.
It was the same kind of sense.
It changes. I tell you,
I was there. Much stronger.
So what's different this time? Netanyahu was the master politician.
One has to believe that maybe things will go better. So last time, 4 years ago...
I believe worse. I believe worse.
4 years ago, the polls gave him as a loser. What he did in 24 hours or 48 hours before people voted is, until now, so mysterious. Is it the Arabs? Is it something? Is it his charisma? Is it something divine?
No,
something
there
divine?
was the Friday polls before the election that Herzog was leading Netanyahu by 4 seats, and people decided instead to vote for the small right-wing parties to vote Likud. There was above 60 seats all the time, the right-wing coalition. It was only a psychological issue, and people believe that Kachlon, that was then very strong, said that if Herzog will win by a margin stronger than 4 seats, he will take it into consideration.
Tonight, the Likud party launches its campaign. In just a few hours, I-24 News will have coverage of this. Does the party now, do they shift gears and turn away from the indictment file because they believe it weakens?
What shocks me?
In a way, the election now, unfortunately, are a referendum about the accusations, and people still don't absorb that when they speak about bribery, they speak about positive newspaper coverage, which never in history was regarded as a consideration for bribery. So when they will realize it, it may help Likud. I hope that election campaign will be about issues, about economy, about the policy, about the Trump plan that is maybe emerging, but it will be at the end of the day about what my friend Ben Simon said. Netanyahu is a driver. You are in a dangerous drive in the mountains, and you don't change drivers if you have a qualified one.
Very quickly, I'll give you the last word, but I need a 20-second answer.
These elections is about Netanyahu, are about Netanyahu.
Clearly.
I mean,
that's why we will win.
Okay, he's so dominant. Since Ben-Gurion, we didn't have somebody like him. And that's why it's about Netanyahu, for him or against him, nothing else.
Okay,